This week on the short game, we reroute power to the rear deflectors. Welcome back to another episode of The Short Game. The Short Game is a weekly panel discussion where we talk about short video games. Really good ones. This week, I'm joined by my brother Shane.
Hi guys, I'm Shane.
And my good friend Nate Heininger.
Hey guys, I'm Nate.
Yep, that is accurate. And I am your host, Reagan Kelly. This week we're talking about the indie...
Masterpiece.
This week, we're talking about the indie masterpiece, FTL, Faster Than Light. It's become one of my favorite games of the last few years, and I'm really excited to talk about it today. But before we dig into it, we can talk a little bit about what's new. What are you guys playing lately?
I am playing Hearthstone on my iPad, so I've been doing a lot of iPad-based games. This is not a game that I saw myself getting into as much as I've actually done, and I think this is a free-to-play game done right. For if you haven't seen Hearthstone, you turned me onto it, Reagan.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Have you seen Hearthstone, Nate?
I'm aware that it exists, and it seems like something that I would like, but I have not played it yet.
Well, you can download it for free on your Mac or PC if you don't have an iPad, but it does seem like the iPad is the way to play it. What do you like about it, Shane?
Well, what I didn't actually think I would like it. I played it at your recommendation. I like that it's extremely simple, easy to play card-based combat game. I like that it has really nice art and voice acting. I like that all the environments are fun.
The production values are really high.
Well, I mean, that's what I would expect from a Blizzard game, so it's definitely up to par for that. I could see, like, it's offering me freebies in World of Warcraft just for playing, which I do not
Is
play.
that an incentive for you?
Yes, I've won a Hearthsteed for my WoW character.
I think we all got Hearthsteeds, Shane.
But I don't know, what I really like about the game is that with a lot of free-to-play games, I feel like I have to fork over money in order to unlock stuff, and I've just been constantly unlocking new cards and new characters as I've played, and the combat's really enjoyable. Like, the mechanics are simple, but there's a lot of cleverness to it. It reminds me, as all of these kinds of games do, of when I was a kid, really into Magic the Gathering, which is something that I have not really played or experienced in any way that I really liked since then. So I definitely recommend it. It's a great way to kill a few hours or more.
I like any game like that I've found so far, card-based games. But I have not ventured into Hearthstone yet, so I probably will soon.
It's done just a few things that I think are really genius. One is that the cards, while you can gain cards, you can essentially pay to unlock more cards in the form of buying expert packs, it calls them. And you can earn new cards in drops. And you can also craft cards. So if you end up with cards that you don't want, you can turn them into dust. And then you can use a crafting mechanic to specifically craft certain cards that you really want. So there's all these different ways to gain cards. But there's no marketplace or trading of cards. So the cards, I think they were very, very smart there. There's not really a quote-unquote value to the cards. You're not in a situation where, well, this card is worth 38 cents on the marketplace, or I could eBay this card or trade this card for this other card. That is off the table. And I think that really, really helps make the game still feel fun and casual and not making it feel like a constantly monetized experience. And the other thing that I think they did that was really smart was, while yes, you can pay money to get expert packs and open packs and get new cards, probably the main way that you spend money on the game is with the arena, which is a kind of a separate game mode. So you could pay in-game gold or in real money to enter the arena. And it's like, I forget how much it is. It's like $2 or $3, something like that. And you enter the arena, and it's kind of like a card draft. So they do a card draft where you collect cards from a joint pool. So you don't have to be prepared with a huge, amazing deck in advance. And then everybody's playing with more or less a roughly equal chance of getting a good deck for this game mode in the arena. And then when everybody has their deck, you play against other people who are in the same arena as you. And if you rack up 3 wins in the arena, then you get a big reward. And you get larger and larger rewards the longer you can stay in. So you'd play several games against someone, or against a series of real opponents on the internet. And I think it's really smart, because then you're not just paying for stuff in the game. You can do that, but it's not the main way to spend money in the game. The main way to spend money in the game is to pay to unlock an evening of great gameplay against other people, with the possibility of unlocking cool stuff if you win. It's a really different kind of take on free to play, and I think it's absolutely ingenious. It reminds me more of the way that Valve does the free to play mechanics in Team Fortress 2. Because in Team Fortress 2, you don't pay to get stuff. You kind of can, but mainly you pay for keys to get priority access to servers or stuff like that. So it's more like pay to experience a better game mode than it is pay to get stuff or pay to win. Really awesome thinking behind it. I think it's fantastic.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Nate, what are you playing lately?
I have been playing a game called Mercenary Kings. I downloaded it for free on my PlayStation 4.
Oh, you showed me the artwork from that, and it looks absolutely awesome.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. It's a side-scrolling kind of shoot 'em up, kind of retro. It's not 8-bit, probably 16-bit, somewhere in that world.
Are we really still measuring bits? I mean, we've got millions of
point.
colors at our disposal now.
What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take some screenshots and just count the different colors that you see in the color palette, and just see how many there are.
It's probably a lot of bits. It's actually, if we're really counting bits, it's probably a lot of bits, but it's made to look like there are very few bits.
It's got this pixel art style.
There you
How
go.
inventive.
Yeah. New and original pixel art style.
Mm-hmm.
But what's probably the most fun about it is that it has local co-op as well as online co-op. And
okay, you just sold me on this game, because I will play absolutely any game that has both local and online co-op.
And they've actually perfectly melded the two. You can say I've got me and a friend who wants to play the game. Well, I could... you can have up to 4 in a party, and I could get 2 online players to fill out my party and continue playing.
That's fantastic. Shane and I have been playing Trine 2 recently for just that reason, because it's been letting me and Shane's wife all play at the same time.
Nice. Yeah, it's a ton of fun. You basically have your character, and you go out on these missions. The missions have a short amount of kind of time requirement. Usually it'll be you have 15 minutes to complete it, 20 minutes to complete it. It'll basically be you with your little army guy going through and just shooting a lot of bad guys and trying to rescue a hostage or something like that. Mm-hmm. But the thing that's pretty interesting about it is that it has a pretty in-depth modification aspect to it, where you return back to the base after each mission and you can fully customize your weapons, fully customize your armor. There's body modifications.
Like sweet plugs?
Yeah, exactly. All based off of material that you find in the missions. So you might kill someone and they drop aluminum or
Because I was
going
to say, looking at this, it looks kind of like a Metal Slug type game.
I love Metal Slug.
We all love Metal Slug, Reagan. But this looks like Metal Slug with I guess the ability to customize your character and play with buddies online. So, hey,
that's so appealing to me.
What's wrong about that, man?
And so this game is available on Steam on both Mac and PC. So that's a killer selling point, and on the PS4
for free.
For free.
At least it is on the PS4.
Free
Yeah, it
fitty.
looks like it's free on the PS4. It's $20 for Steam early access keys.
I
There you
am
go.
probably willing to spend $20 on this if you're up to play it with me, guys.
Yeah, I don't know if a cross-platform, if I can play with you on my PS4 while you're on your Mac.
Yeah, that may not be possible, but we'll work something out. The game
Yeah.
sounds absolutely awesome.
It's a ton of fun.
Couple other things I wanted to note about it because I did a little bit of looking. Shane, do you remember the game Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the movie, the game?
I do remember when that came out, although I read the comic and saw the movie, but never played the game.
I never played the game either. I have the game's soundtrack because it is a fantastic album by Anamanaguchi. Great chiptune soundtrack. But this is apparently the team that made that game. It started with a Kickstarter project like every other video game these days.
Of course.
Do you even have to say that anymore? Isn't Kickstarter just the way that video games get made today?
I don't think that anyone does anything without a Kickstarter project anymore. Speaking of which, I think our Kickstarter project for this podcast will be getting off the ground shortly, and we'll be selling the right to appear on the podcast.
For just $100 a year, you can have a beautiful The Short Game tote bag.
It's very exciting times for our podcast.
Absolutely. I'll give you a back rub for $20.
Only 20.
Yeah, I'm cheap.
So we've talked a little bit in the past about a game called Guacamelee, a game I just played recently, and I was super, super excited by. It was a great sort of combination of a brawler with a really cool fighting mechanic, but with the exploration and kind of level traversal of something like a Metroidvania. And it was one of the most exciting games for me this year. It came out last year. It was not a brand new game when I got it. I think I picked it up in the Humble Bundle, but oh my gosh, so much fun. And it's another one that's available on all kinds of platforms. It's coming out on the PS4 pretty soon. It's already out on the PlayStation Vita, and it's out on Steam, and I think you can get it for like $15, and you absolutely should. It's a fantastic game. But the team that made that, Drinkbox Studios, who I really admire, pretty much based solely on that one game, has a trailer out for a new game that they're putting out this coming year or maybe late this year. I'm not sure if they have an actual release date yet, but I don't think so. It sounded pretty far off in the future.
Yeah, well, when's the Kickstarter end?
I haven't seen a Kickstarter for this. I think that they're still riding high on their bazillion Guacamelee dollars. I hope they made a bazillion
They made
dollars.
a bazillion dollars?
They got that FU mad guacamole money, man.
Like $0.100. So the game is called Severed, and unlike their previous games, it's going to be a touch-based game. They haven't totally, it seems, nailed down. They know it's going to be on iOS, probably also on Android, although that wasn't really certain. And they haven't really determined yet whether it's going to be multi-touch required, so probably, only on those devices, or whether it might also come out on devices like the PlayStation Vita or the Nintendo DS or 3DS, where it might not have actual multi-touch. But anyway, the game, I think the thing that really makes it look amazing is the art style. So if you have a chance, check the show notes. We're going to have a link to the concept video and a couple of articles about the game. It looks fantastic. But the premise is basically it's a kind of a cross between a adventure game where you're, moving around through a world, mostly through tap controls and stuff, and first-person combat in the style of something like Infinity Blade. You're playing a character who has had her arm cut off, and it's this very sort of almost drug trippy kind of world with really, really bizarre art where she's following her crawling arm around and trying to get it back. And in the meantime, she's like fighting enemies and cutting off their parts and reattaching them to her parts to gain their powers.
That sounds revolting.
I know, but you've got to see the art. It looks so cool. It really, really
That sounds
looks
like
cool.
a lot of fun.
Anyway, I think it's really exciting, mainly just to see that Drinkbox is doing another game. The fact that it's going to be on iOS, I'm excited by because I've been playing a ton of games on my iPad recently, including the one we're going to be talking about today, FTL, Faster Than Light.
Good segue.
Yeah, sweet
Good
segue,
segue,
bro.
man. Yeah, that'll really hype the listeners up.
All right, so before we really dig into this, we've been trying to make sure we avoid spoilers in all of the games that we talk about. What do you guys think about spoilers on FTL? Are we going to have a problem here?
I personally will just give my bite-sized opinion on spoilers, which is that I don't care about spoilers.
Yeah.
So in this episode, as with all episodes, I don't care about spoilers. I respect those people who do. I don't want to ruin your experience, but science has shown that spoilers don't matter.
That's true. I'll see if I can drop a link in the show notes. There have been numerous studies that...
I think there was probably one mostly BS study that confirmed my opinion.
There was a non-statistically significant study that was quoted in pop sci articles sometime around 2011 that said that people enjoy, I think the specific example of the study was short stories. They statistically, observably enjoy them more if they hear spoilers. But that aside, I don't think we need to worry about spoilers for FTL because for the first time on our podcast, we're talking about a non-narrative game.
Yeah, I think the only thing, this would be kind of a stretch to call it spoiler, would be if you're somebody who really craves the strategy and does not want to hear perhaps hints or tips on how to do well at this game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. A big appeal of this game is dying over and over.
So true.
Yeah, and figuring out all the little ways to kind of maximize your ability to make it as far as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So we're definitely going to be talking about some of those.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be talking about our best strategy tips for the game. But because of the structure of this game, it's not really story-driven. There is kind of a frame story to kind of set that up. FTL is a game where you play as essentially a spaceship. You've got a crew, you're managing a spaceship, and you're trying to get it across an area of space, point A to point B, and each time you jump from place to place, you have an encounter that may include battle, and you're managing the resources of your starship to kind of try to survive these battles and eventually get to the end of the game and fight the final dude, and hooray, you win. So really exciting story there.
I would sort of describe the story as Star Wars and Star Trek with all the serial numbers filed off.
I've seen it described, the game, as Firefly by way of the roguelike genre, which I think is a really apt description. That was Ben Kuchera of, I think, Polygon.
Yeah, there's definitely a diverse and interesting world that you're moving, or universe that you're moving through, but there's not a single storyline, considering the fact that it's a procedurally generated random encounter game.
Mm-hmm. You don't really stop to chat with the locals.
The locals are interesting, though, and there's a pretty big collection of different races and ships and a fantastically large collection of weapons and encounters. And so there's really an infinite number of different scenarios that you might find yourself in.
Mm-hmm. But those scenarios are kind of shuffled each time. So the game has it's not really a narrative so much as a collection of interesting encounters that you play through as you try to reach the end. In a way, I think it kind of has a lot in common with something like a board game or a puzzle game, because you're not so much playing through a story as you're playing through a series of situations, probably numerous times. Each time that you play the game, your session is probably going to be pretty short. Like, I could... Nate, if you beat the game, like if you get from the very first stage all the way to the end and complete the final boss, what would you say is like your average amount of time to do that?
Well, that can definitely vary depending on the playstyle that you've chosen, or the one that leads you to victory. But I had one that took me actually about 2.5 hours to play from start to finish. And then I've had another one that took me about an hour and a half. From start to finish.
And I think that's why it really appeals to me, is it feels a lot like playing a great board game, because you have that, it's going to take you maybe an hour to complete, or maybe 2 or 3 hours to complete if you're playing a really extended one. But then you can finish it. Maybe you won, maybe you lost. You can examine how you did and why you did the way you did, and try it again. I have always lost this game.
It should be said, though, I've played, at this point, a ton. And most of my runs probably go a minimum about 45 minutes. When you start the game as a new player, most of your runs
10 minutes.
10 minutes. You're not going to make it very far. It is an incredibly complicated. It's one of those games. It's
brutally punishing.
It's easy to kind of grasp at the beginning, but the minute mechanic capabilities of the game and how specific you can get with your strategy and how you control your ship takes a while to get a hold of, so you will die a lot.
Absolutely. I know I have.
The thing that is interesting to me about this game is that it is totally a style of game that I've never seen before.
It is. It has a lot in common with certain other things. But actually, to kind of describe the sort of feel and to sort of basically describe the game, the best thing that I've been able to explain when people look over my shoulder and see me playing this on my iPad or on my Mac is that it's kind of like those scenes in Star Trek where you see the captain sitting in his chair and directing traffic on the ship as battle is going on. You know,
reroute power from the rear deflectors.
Yes, and he's yelling at the science officers to, increase their long-range scans, and he's yelling at the engineering to repair the engines and make sure that they direct power over to the airlocks. It's that moment in Star Trek repeated over and over again, because you're getting to command this starship, upgrade your starship, and it really has the fun of space combat, but with the sort of detached. It's not turn-based, but you have the ability to pause the action at any time and consider every action that you take.
Oh yeah, and queue up actions as you're paused.
Exactly. So you have this feeling of being in command of the entire situation. This ship is never wildly out of your control. Shit can go down really badly, really quickly, but you can always pause the action and analyze and make informed, captainly decisions about your ship.
You're not controlling the movement of the ship at all, which is very different than most space battle games. The ship is, for all intents and purposes, stationary. You're controlling what's going on inside of the ship. You're not, most space battle games, you're kind of like a joystick or something controlling how the ship's moving through space. You have no control over that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I heard someone, I wish I remember who, describe the game saying, in most space combat simulators, you are the pilot, and in this game, you are the captain.
Perfect description.
Absolutely.
And I even thought about it a little more. I kind of envision, as I play this game, I fantasize that I'm some sort of ship AI that's like, infinitely wise and, incredibly vicious.
And incredibly attractive.
Yes, just huge tracts of land.
You brought it up a moment ago, comparing it to a board game. I don't know if you read this or not, but the developers actually did design this with board game mechanics in mind.
Really? Actually, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they kind of were inspired by board games. And the layout of the game, which we haven't really discussed that much yet, is kind of reminiscent of a board game.
Yeah, visually it kind of reminds me of a board game.
Absolutely. You're basically looking at your ship from top down as if it had been cut in half horizontally. So you see top down all the rooms open, and
on
where
a grid.
on a grid where all of your people are, and you see the enemy ships that way as well.
I actually saw some screenshots that were from an early version of the game that had a much more detail to all of the rooms. Like all the systems were like, the people had little chairs to sit in and stuff like that. And they stripped all that away as they built the game out. And apparently the reason they gave for that was they wanted the game not only, to have an appealing visual style, but to be very clear when you look at it what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is one of the things that they did very well in the game. It's translated well over to the iPad as well. Like, you can look at your screen and you have in front of you, it's a very complex game, but you see every aspect of the ship.
Absolutely. It scratches a lot of the same itches for me that Civilization did, but over a much, much shorter span for the game.
More
Not to
there's
say that there's a
definitely-
lot in common with Civ. Civ is a very different game, but it, in a weird way, like it scratches that same. I want to think and make decisions about the path I'm going to take through this game, and yeah, it has that same board gamey intellectual
Right.
feel.
Well, like Civ, you're dealing and managing with the short term while planning for the long term.
Yeah.
So
So
it's very much a like a resource management game. You have limited energy for the systems on your ship,
Mhm.
and those limits are all constantly being tested by opponents.
Yeah,
And,
having people, you have a finite amount of crew, and having
Mhm.
a crew member in a room with a system makes that system more powerful.
Mhm.
So you have to decide which rooms you value or which systems you value
Mhm.
before you acquire more crew.
And something that gets thrown around a lot when people talk about this game is that it's a roguelike. Have you guys ever played any other games that you would describe as a roguelike?
I've played
Yeah.
many roguelikes.
Have you really?
I got very into
Yes.
roguelikes for a little while.
That's interesting because when I played this game, I actually think this may be the first roguelike that I really got deeply into. I have played a couple others, but to kind of define that term, roguelike is a genre term that obviously it stems from a game called Rogue, games like Rogue, but Rogue is a really, really old game. It's one of these ones that would have run on big mainframe computers in its early days. It's entirely a text-based game, but the things about it that really stand out as ones that are still kind of inspiring other games today is that, first of all the levels are procedurally generated. You know, everything is being created for you randomly, so each time you play the game, you're getting a different experience. When you die, you start over completely from scratch, and that means that while your progress through the game isn't so much about leveling up a character or improving your stuff or your stats, your progress in the game is about getting better as a player, which is interesting and kind of appealing.
And also a throwback in a way where it's all about high score.
Yeah.
Your main goal is to get a high score.
Yeah.
Uh,
You don't have to beat this game in order to win. When you win, you'll know it because you do better than your last time.
yeah.
Other things about roguelikes that make them kind of unique. Usually in roguelikes, they're either turn-based or have a pause mechanic like FTL does, so that you can stop the action and really make analytical choices. They're not action games. And you have a completely different experience each time you play the game. Sometimes that even goes as far as with most roguelikes, when you pick up an item, like, for example, I pick up a blue potion. I may not know what a blue potion does until I try it. And if I play the game once and I discover through use or, whatever, that my blue potion is a potion of fireballs, well, the next time I play the game and I find another blue potion, it may actually not be a potion of fireballs. It may be a healing potion, or it may be poison. So every single time you play a game in that roguelike genre, not only are you seeing different levels, but you're seeing an almost entirely different game.
I also wanted to throw out real quick that my 3 highest scores in FTL thus far have not come from any of my runs that have ended in victory. Victory being defeating the Rebel flagship, the final boss. I have defeated the Rebel flagship multiple times, and my 3 highest scores are not from those runs. Now, they've mostly been from runs where I have made it to the boss and lost in the boss, so it's not like I was very far from it, but still, it goes to show you it's not about necessarily winning that game. It's about how you go about doing it.
Yeah, I think that when you lose that game, it is as fun as when you win it, and that is a really good game when that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
Yes and no. There are times where I have had some fantastic ships that I've been so excited about, and I'm like, this ship is going to take me all the way. And then some stray missile hits my pilot, destroys my Dodge. I'll talk about this one later, probably. It's a very recent game, still annoying, and your whole run just comes crumbling down. But I really like roguelikes. I really like that, the finality of it. It's done. I lost. Time to start over.
Yeah, or time to stop and come back to it another time, because like a good board game, it's something that you can pick up, play for a limited, short period of time. That's the title of the show, guys. And then...
Short period of time.
Welcome to the Short Period of Time game.
I'm your host. What was I saying?
You were talking about games that you could play for a short period of time that you might enjoy for a weekend or,
You guys are awesome. So yeah, I loved this game for that reason. It's a great game to be able to pick up and play for an evening and then finish, and you can play it again because it feels almost infinitely replayable. You're always able to go back into it and try it again, but you really can play this game and get a really good feel of what it has to offer in 3 or 4 runs. Maybe spend 4 hours with the game.
Yeah, they also included some unlockables that you don't need to do them, but basically you can unlock new ships, which each ship has a specific play style built around it. Some are better at maybe being focused on the drone system, or some are more laser based, some are more missile based, and you can enjoy the game as it comes, or if you get really deep into it, you can unlock these new ships and try to beat it in new and different play styles.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about what happens in a game of FTL. Let's take it from the beginning to somewhere near the end, and let's talk about some of the things that you might expect to do or have happen to you and your ship and your crew while you play.
Sure. Well, let's say we're just starting off as a brand new player. If I just downloaded this app on my iPad, or I've installed it on my Mac or PC, I'm going to be put into a ship called the Kestrel. And
it's a pretty good ship.
It's honestly, I think it's the best ship in the game. I haven't unlocked that many ships. Well, I mean, it's the best ship that I have managed to unlock.
Nate is shaking his head.
Nate, I'm guessing you've got some fancy. So Nate said earlier, you don't need to unlock these ships. I need to unlock these ships.
Yeah, I have unlocked. This game has gotten in my head more than any game that I can ever remember before. We say this game is a short game. I agree that it is, but I've spent more time on this game in the last 6 months than almost any other game that I can think of. But
it has that capacity.
It has that. Yeah, exactly. The Kestrel is a great ship because it has 2 very good starting weapons, and 2 very good starting weapons can get you very deep into a run, just on their own.
Mm-hmm. It's got a combination of a nice,
thing that makes
simple...
it a good set of starting weapons. It has a burst laser and it has a missile launcher. And the missile, missiles are a consumable resource, but those missiles pass right through the enemy shield. And the burst laser is great because it fires off 3 successive laser blasts. Each one can take down 1 level of an enemy shield. Mm-hmm. So this ship seems like it's designed to get through at least low-level enemy shields with no problem.
Yeah, they really set you up for success. And that, I think, is the first strategy tip that we probably should talk about, is if you're playing with the Kestrel, as you will be for many of your first runs, you want to probably leave the auto fire feature of the weapons turned off and try and time your blasts with those guns so that you can drop a missile down through your enemy's shield and hopefully hit their shield system and deactivate it. And that'll let you get at least 2 and maybe all 3 of your burst lasers blasts right down onto the enemy ship. And if you're aiming that, you probably want to aim it for either their weapons to try and disable their weapons so that they won't be able to shoot at you, or maybe at their pilot to prevent them from dodging or something like that.
Yep, absolutely. Timing your weapons is one of the biggest kind of skill sets that you'll kind of grow with the more you play. Learning what weapons hit at what time, do what type of damage, how to stagger them so you make the most out of each volley each time you fire your weapons.
Mm-hmm. So you've been dropped into the Kestrel, you've got your weapons primed, and you're headed off on your first trip through the game. What are some of the kinds of things that you're going to run into?
Well, first you'll have the option, you'll hit a big yellow button that says jump, and you'll be taken to a map that'll show probably, 15 different little dots with one all the way on the far right saying exit. And you'll have the option of taking whatever path you want by jumping from dot to dot, each dot being an individual encounter.
Mm-hmm.
And your goal
referred to in the game as nodes.
Yep, or beacons.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. Beacons. Yeah. What's a node?
That's really the same word.
Node beacons.
Yeah, a node beacon. And all the while, each jump you make, a big looming red kind of swarm is following you. And that's the enemy fleet. And so you have
one huge fleet, man.
Yeah. You have a finite amount of time within each sector before you can get to the exit. And so you want to maximize the amount of beacons you hit in each sector before getting to the exit. But you choose your own route. As you if you hover your mouse or your finger on an iPad over a beacon, it'll show you what the connecting beacons are. So you can kind of choose your route through the sector.
And if you're not seeing those lines in advance that let you plan out your jumps, that is an option on the Windows and Mac version that you have to enable in the settings. On the iPad, it seems to be on by default. But if you're not seeing those little lines to help you guide your path through the system or the sector, make sure you turn that feature on, because otherwise you're going to have no idea how many jumps it is from one place to the next.
Yep. And so the vast majority of encounters will be some sort of direct combat. It'll give you a little bit of flavor text. You know, you've stumbled across a pirate looting the corpse of a destroyed ship. You've found a scared rock cruiser that attacks you out of, concern for its well-being, whatever. And you just go straight into combat.
Mm-hmm. And then the combat is, once again, that's where you can pause at any moment. You can consider your actions. You can fire off your weapons. You can power up and down certain systems. So, for example, if you want to direct extra power to your shields while you're being fired at, you can power down your oxygen or your med bay systems and then power them up again later. So there's a lot to do during the combat.
Yeah, and that's going to be, I'm just pulling this number, I don't know, but probably 7 out of 10 jumps will be an immediate, you're just in combat.
That sounds about right.
There's a sizable amount of other ones where you might have an option. You might get to choose, do I attack this ship or do I try to hide from this ship? Or there's some where it's like, there's a Mantis ship fighting an NG ship. Do you aid the Mantis ship or do you aid the NG ship?
Or do you fly on past?
Or, hey, this space station is on fire. Do you A, send in a crew to rescue that crew? Do you dock your ship to the burning space station to try to get them off? Or do you just go on by? Each with its own randomly generated solution. You might get the same encounter 3 times, but each time, and if you chose the same answer each time, you'd probably still get a different outcome every time.
There are even situations where having a particular piece on your ship, a particular system, like a teleporter or a crew member of a particular species, will give you a special blue option that are usually much more favorable than any of the other choices. And so, just for example, if you're next to a stranded ship and you have a teleporter, it might offer to allow you to beam people aboard from the stranded ship rather than dock with them.
Yep.
In a hazardous situation.
Always do the blue options.
Yes,
It's
that's
always
another
a
good tip.
It's always a good outcome.
You have a much better chance of getting a good outcome. Sometimes bad things do happen, like you might get something cool, but also take some damage to your hull, or you might get something cool, but also lose a crew member or something like that. But usually the blue option will involve a good outcome.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of other types of encounters.
Alien spiders are no.
Oh yeah, don't ever do the alien spiders. Don't ever do the giant spider unless you have a clone bay.
Oh God,
because
alien
it's
spiders. They're always a mistake.
It's about an 80% chance that you're gonna lose a crew member.
Yeah, that's bad news bears.
Don't do it. It's
and
not
even
worth
if
it.
even if you succeed, which I have tried and I have succeeded, I have sent more crew members to their deaths at the hands of these spiders than I really should have. And when you do succeed, the reward is like just like nothing.
Hey, you've got some dead spiders.
Yeah, it's really not worth it. It is never my instinct in this game to pass on an event, to just be like, meh, and just move on to the next beacon. That event I pass every time because it's not worth it.
Mm-hmm. So one other type of encounter that you'll have in the game would be stores. Sometimes you'll jump into areas in the game where you can shop for add-ons to your ship. I should say, actually, you can upgrade your ship in certain ways without having to visit a store. So as you proceed through the game, the kind of currency that you collect is scrap. If you beat a ship, or if you complete one of these little encounters, you'll usually get a payoff in the form of some kind of resources, most often scrap. And once you've collected enough scrap, you can use that to upgrade the various systems of your ship. So, for example, you might spend 20 scrap and get one extra bar of being able to like power your med bay, or one extra bar
upgrade
of
your engines, something like that.
And the prices will vary and the payoffs will vary. What are the first upgrades you guys usually do to your ship?
Always shields, personally. When I'm getting started in the game, my number one priority is to get a second layer of shields, because laser weapons are way more common in the game than things like missiles. And even if an enemy has both, the lasers tend to fire first and fire more often. And so good shields can really protect you.
Yep.
After that, I will usually work on upgrading the dodge ability of the ship. Nate, you were saying earlier that like dodge is super important. I didn't really catch on to that until recently.
It makes a big difference. That was a tip that Nate gave me that's really improved my play.
Yeah,
so don't forget about dodging.
Might be, I'll say a fourth bubble of shield is actually almost never necessary. Rather spend that money upgrading your engine, which will have a longer and more lasting effect, because every time you dodge a shot, your shield's entirely unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
And missiles are unaffected by shields, and missiles do the most damage typically. So I try to do the first bar of shields first, and then I do 2 bars into my engines as my next upgrade, as well as the reactor power to be able to power those things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, actually. I actually have some questions for you guys. What are your favorite systems to add to the ship? Because when you get to these stores, you'll usually have a choice of several different systems. There's a lot of variety. Space in the ship is limited. So far, like I've had some very big success working with the teleporter. But there's even some new systems like the cloning bay or the hacking that are new in this setup.
Yeah, we should mention that at the time you're hearing this podcast, there was a pretty recent addition to FTL called the Advanced Edition. It was a free upgrade for people who already owned FTL on the Mac or PC, and it coincided with the release of the iPad version, which includes it out of the gate. So if you've bought FTL in any version, you now have FTL Advanced Edition. And that content can be turned on and off. But the big additions were some new systems for your ship, including the cloning bay, which is a replacement, I guess, for the med bay that allows you to allow your crew members to be killed in combat and then clone them and get a new one. There's also a hacking mechanic where you can specifically target and disable certain systems on your enemy's ship. There's also a new race that I am embarrassed to say I haven't actually encountered yet because I haven't gotten far enough since that I've been trying that.
They're only in a specific sector too.
Okay.
Yeah, I've found them. I'm in their sector right now on my current playthrough.
They are
they?
the most obnoxious boarders. They're called the Lanius, and when they're in a room, they drain the oxygen from it. So if you're trying to fight them and you're doing some sort of boarding mechanism or they board you, you have to kill them before they drain the oxygen in the room, or your guys, for those who haven't played, if you're in a room that has no oxygen, your crew members rapidly lose
Predictable
health.
things will occur.
Yeah, exactly. They rapidly lose health. So with that on top of a giant monster beating them, your guys die very fast.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be very difficult.
Your mentioning of oxygen brings me to my absolute favorite mechanic in the game, which is venting the ship.
I love the doors system.
Yes, if you have control over the doors,
Which hopefully you do.
and you get boarded, a really excellent strategy, especially early on in the game, if you're not great with the combat, is just send all of your characters, send all of your crew members to the med bay, turn the med bay on so they're being healed, and then open all the doors to space. All the oxygen in the ship will be sucked out, because the med bay is the only place on the ship with oxygen. All the boarders will try and run to beat their way in. By the time they make it in, they're usually at about half health, and you're sitting pretty, being healed by nanobots, and when they get in, you can just finish them.
Another tip there is that if you have 2 bars with your med bay, if you've upgraded your med bay, then you can flood even the med bay, and your characters will get enough healing to actually improve in health while sitting in total vacuum.
Yeah, in order to fully pull this off, you need to have upgraded doors. And that is normally my third purchase. I do shields, I do engines, and then I upgrade the doors. Because if you don't have the upgraded doors, they pass right through them. And while it's nice to kind of filter or bottleneck everybody into one room, if they have to stop at each door and break it down, you can sometimes have them killed before they even get to the med bay, especially if you get to 3 levels of the doors.
And that'll really help if their ship is also shooting at you at the same time, because this whole hide in the med bay thing works really well until they also hit you with a missile, and then you're going to start having problems.
And that's where this game gets heavy and gets complicated, is because oftentimes the intruders, and that's how they kind of listed in the game, it will say intruders on board, the boarders will jump on your ship right at the start of the fight. So you have to hit pause immediately, and you have to assign your crew members to deal with the boarders on your ship, and then also charge up your weapons and decide what you're going to fire on first. And so you've got a lot of things going on all at one moment. And the biggest tip that I can give to everybody is pause, and pause often. Before I make virtually any decision, I will pause the game.
Absolutely.
I am doing very little just on the fly.
That's definitely a good way to play. I sometimes feel like I can play the game real time, and it has led to me blowing my ship up in stupid ways more times than I can really admit.
Because things snowball. There's fire is capable of happening on your ship, both from laser burst, missile burst. There are fire weapons, and if there's fire in the room, you have to send a guy to the room, put out the fire, and then fix the system that was broken. And so there are multiple levels of brokenness, and if something gets shattered and is on fire, it can take quite some time to fix it. And so let's say they catch your weapons system on fire. Well, you are just weaponless, and you're just floating there being fired on. So there's a lot of stuff that you have to deal with really quickly. And if you try to just wing it, I can almost guarantee that you're going to be forgetting about something. You're going to have forgotten to fire your weapons, or you're going to have left a guy in an airless room.
I have killed my entire crew simply by forgetting to turn the power back on to the O2 machines.
Oh, absolutely.
I'll power it down in the middle of a fight, and I'll get 2 jumps away. I'll be like, wait, all of my rooms are flashing pink. What does that mean? And then I'll realize, oh, I have 3% oxygen remaining, and I'll try to pause the game and turn it back on, but no, I was too slow, and my crew is already all dead.
Does this game in this kind of element where it's like they've all died? It's just really reminiscent to me of like Oregon Trail.
Oh yeah,
like,
absolutely.
It's like and I love that it lets me name the ship and name my original crew members, because I'll always name them after friends.
Yeah, you can rename the new crew members now. That's a new element of Advanced Edition.
Oh,
I
didn't notice. That's
that's
great.
nice. I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can name them all.
Yeah, which is actually, you're right,
good.
that's actually a really, really wonderful element of it, because after you finish the game, you can go back to your scores page and look at all your previous runs, and you see the names you've given to each of your ships, and the names of some of the crew, and what your score was, and you can remember how you accidentally killed Shane and Nate by leaving them in a airless vacuum for too long.
Yeah. I have had probably one of the saddest ones is I teleported 2 of my guys over to the enemy ship in order to fight the enemy crew, and they instigated an escape and then fired upon my teleporters, breaking them, and I was unable to...
They escaped with your guys. Oh, that's so sad. I had that happen during a fight with the flagship. I had this perfect ship. I guess do you guys want to talk about your favorite runs? Because I'm about to talk about my favorite run. Okay, so in my very best run that I ever had, it was one of my first runs with the Advanced Edition. It was my first time to try out the cloning bay, which is a great addition to the game. It replaces your med bay. You're no longer able to specifically heal your guys, but if it's powered up and a guy dies, it just starts, cooking up a new copy of him. They lose a little bit of their abilities and stuff, but
They get a little dumb.
Yeah, they don't come out perfect.
Yeah, we actually haven't talked about that real quick. As your crew members work in various systems, they get better at those systems.
So another tip there is, if you assign somebody to, for example, the shields, you pretty much want to leave him on the shields forever, because he'll improve at that one system.
Another element in the new version is that when you assign people in Advanced Edition to either the sensors or the doors, it automatically provides 1 level upgrade to that system. So you don't have to spend that money right away, Nate, if you've got a spare person on your doors upgrade. You can drop a guy on the doors upgrade. And so when I'm venting the ship, I send 3 guys to the med bay and a 4th guy to the doors room, because he upgrades the doors, keeps everything in lockdown.
I noticed that entirely by mistake, and it already saved my butt. That was a really great, I think, change to the way that the game works.
It is nice.
But I was getting into my my best run ever. My best run was all about that cloning bay, because right on top of each other, I got the cloning bay and an upgrade called the DNA bank. And the DNA bank basically means that you don't have to power your cloning bay all the time. Normally, with a med bay, you'll keep it powered up. You will not keep it powered up because you only need it to power it up when you need to heal somebody, and so you don't spend the energy on that. But the cloning bay, if there's any risk that somebody's going to die, you want to have that turned on, because if it's off and somebody dies, they're gone. Now, with cloning bank, that cloning bay could be on fire and turned off, and you'll still be able to bring your guys back when you fix it and get everything set back up. So I had that. I had a crew with 3 Mantis on it. The Mantis are the best fighters in the game.
Ooh, they're mean.
And I had a teleporter. And on top of that, I had some pretty decent weapons. I had some of the starting weapons from the Kestrel, and I had some ion weapons on top of that are great for shutting down enemy systems. So I felt extremely well prepared going into the flagship. I had been steamrolling the entire system after system. I went through nothing but red systems on the way there just because I could and I wanted the extra scrap. So I had more scrap. I had a higher score than I've ever had in this game. And I get to the flagship. My whole strategy is based around teleporting these guys onto the flagship. I teleport these guys onto the flagship. They kill off everybody inside. It's a bloodbath. And the flagship teleports off. With my mantises on board. I had nothing left.
No.
I had my remaining weapons were pretty much based around shutting down systems. And so I get to the next, I'm like, please, well, I wonder if when I get to the stage 2 of the flagship, maybe they'll still be on board. They weren't.
No,
they weren't still there.
That's awful.
They disappeared. So that was how I lost it all.
Yeah. I had a run very recently, and I kind of hinted at it earlier. I also a failure on the flagship. I had a flak cannon, which is a new element to the game.
I
that
haven't even
fires,
seen those yet.
Yeah, it basically fires.
That's the best weapon in the game now, I think.
It's definitely one of them. I had flak 1, which for 2 energy fires 3 kind of chunks of metal at the enemy ship, and it's not incredibly accurate, but it's very good for taking down shields. So I had that. I had 2 burst laser 2s, which fire a combination of 6 lasers, and then I had a heavy laser 2,
Nice.
which fires a combination of 2 lasers that do 2 damage to systems.
You were a gunship.
So my standard play would be I'd fire the flak, and then as soon as that would knock down the shields, I would unleash 8 shots on the enemy ship, timing the heavy laser to be the last 2 that hit, so those hit 4 damage. So I could take out virtually every important system on the ship in one volley, and then it was pretty much game over. And so, like Shane, I steamrolled my way to the end. And since I was destroying ships with no problem and not taking much damage, I had a ton of money. I had the engines all the way up. I had the shields all the way up. Nobody could stop me. I actually had a crew teleporter and 2 Mantis that I never even used because I would just destroy the enemy ship. But I was saving those guys for the flagship because there's a particular strategy with them that against the flagship that makes that very useful. And I make it all the way to the last round of the flagship. I have lost maybe 4 bars of health across the first 2 rounds of the flagship. And the flagship has a gun on it that shoots 3 missiles at one time. And I'm dodging at about 55% rate here. Very quickly, one of those missiles hits my pilot, pops a hole in it, which destroys the pilot. Doesn't kill the crew member, but pops a hole in it and catches... it caught the room on fire, and I'm on the Red Tail, which is the Kestrel like the second game, and it lights the entire front part of the thing on fire. So I'm not able to put it out in time, which when your pilot is on fire, that puts your dodge to 0%. Now, dodge is was a very big part of my game plan on this. And the final version of the flagship has this move where it shoots 8 lasers,
Oh,
and then
no.
after a countdown shoots 8 missiles. Well, it killed my pilot, dropping my dodge down to nothing. About 15 seconds later, so I'm trying to repair it, but not in time. It fires 8 lasers. Sure, 4 of them get stopped by my shield, but the next 4, they hit my weapons, they hit my shield, they hit my teleporter, and they hit like my doors. And when your doors are
brutal.
broken, you can't vent the rooms to put out any fire. So then I went from utter domination to I was dead within like 45 seconds.
Oh.
And I was just sitting there like, what happened? And, like I said, I pause the game frequently, and I'm just pausing it looking like, what can I do? What can I do? Send that guy in there to try to put out the fire, I guess. Unpause. Well, that's not working. I guess I'm dying now.
Aw. Nate, that's a sad story.
It was very sad. But that's part of the game. And and the random number generator is your friend and your enemy. And I don't know. I love this game. I had spent I was at 2 hours or something into it when that all happened, and it was incredibly disappointing to not finish it off, but it was still ended up being like my 3rd highest score.
Yeah.
So I still felt pretty good.
There's a certain triumph in, even if you don't make it to beat the game, which you probably won't most of the time if you're like me. There's a certain triumph in just getting just a small amount farther than you did before, or even getting annihilated in a really interesting new way.
Oh, yeah. You will, I promise you, if you play this game a lot, at some point, you will die on your very first jump.
Never happened to me so far, but almost.
It will. It will happen, and you can do nothing but laugh, sit back, and hit restart.
Mm-hmm.
I love the kind of weird deaths that you get, like, some just freak shot takes out just the right thing. And I have had something almost like yours, Nate, where somebody lit my doors on fire. And when those doors, that's...
You can't put that fire out.
The whole ship can go up at that point.
Yeah. It's amazing how integral just the door system is to the whole ship.
I've had times where my sensors went out, and my whole strategy's based around teleporting, and that means I can't target a particular room because I can't see what's inside.
Yep.
And I'm out.
I don't have quite as good a story as you guys do because I still haven't gotten to the flagship. I am much worse at this game than either of you guys are, and I also think I just haven't played it quite as much. I have just recently started unlocking some new stuff, and so I really feel like I'm making progress, but most of my deaths are in somewhere around sectors 4 or 5 out of the... How many are there?
Sector 8 is the final sector.
Yeah, so I usually get to about halfway through, and that's not to say that I'm not having fun. The great thing about this game is that I enjoy every time I play it, even if I die in Sector 2.
Absolutely. I'll say that I usually can make it to Sector 4 or 5 every time, and then it's Sector 6 or 7 that is kind of make it or break it. But there are people who play this game much more than any of us that can make it to that they say they will make it to the flagship virtually every run.
And I believe it. Have you gone on Twitch and looked up streams of this game?
I haven't. No.
It's fascinating. You can there's a lot of dedicated people that stream this game on Twitch quite a bit, and it's actually a great resource if you're really interested in the game and you want to, like, I don't usually go quite this deep with games. I don't watch a lot of games streaming on Twitch, and I don't usually look up a lot of detailed, wiki articles about the games that I play. I like short games, and I like to play them from start to finish, and then I go on and move on to something else. But this game has gotten into my head just enough that I have done a lot more of that kind of thing than I would do with a typical game. So a few things I would recommend looking into as resources if you want to go further with the game than just what we've been able to discuss here today would be there's some great wikis about this game. I'll drop a couple of links into the show notes that are links to strategy wikis that cover all the stuff we talked about today and a lot more minutia that will be interesting to you if you get into that side of the game. But also, it's a fantastic game to go watch on Twitch because there's some really great streamers out there who will play the game live on Twitch and comment for you about every decision they're making and why they're making it. And it's very educational. And another great thing about that on Twitch is generally if you're not sure why they're doing something that they're doing, you can ask because usually they're responding to their chat as they stream.
Interesting.
I'm looking in the notes and I'm seeing this this strategy article you've dropped in here, and I tell you, as soon as we get off the show, I'm going to be pouring through this strategy article and playing this game again.
That particular one is great. I'm going to be dropping in a link to a wiki article that's just introductory strategy, but that whole website is great. So definitely dive into that.
There's one thing that I wanted to talk about with you guys about this game too that I think is pretty interesting is there's definitely kind of a moral situation going on in this game that they kind of make you make decisions that you might kind of feel a little bad about sometimes, but for the good of the game.
Like what?
There's one where it's pretty common where you come across a mercenary. And the mercenary you can hire for a certain amount of scrap to delay the rebel fleet or whatever. But honestly, the best thing to do is to fight the mercenary. And that's like the fourth option. And it kind of makes you feel a little bad because your goal here is to acquire scrap. I haven't been talking about it. I haven't said that too much, but really your first and foremost goal should be to get as much scrap as possible because scrap is what drives the entire game. It's how you get new system. It's how you upgrade your ship. So anytime you have a decision, you generally want to choose whatever will result in the most scrap for you.
Mm-hmm. And that mercenary, if you pay him scrap to go delay the rebels, well, that might give you an extra jump or two before the rebels get to you, but you're losing scrap because you're paying him, and you're also losing out on the scrap he would drop if you kill him.
Exactly. And who knows what that one extra jump would result in. So it's best to just kill the mercenary. And it kind of makes you feel a little bad about stuff like
that.
There's
a few other situations like that too.
Exactly. Where there's...
That makes me think of the slaver interaction that comes up pretty often.
Yeah, absolutely. And that one is a pretty easy moral decision because it's either purchase a slave from them or fight the slaver. And for those that have played the game, you'll know that once you fight the slaver, after you get them to about 25% health, they give up and give you a slave.
Or you can proceed to kill them anyway.
Yeah. So then you feel good about both ways, is that you defeated the slaver and you freed one of them.
But then you own a slave, so yeah.
And killed all the remaining slaves on the ship.
Yeah. But, given the choices. Well, see, and that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of different situations like that. You might come across a mantis who is being chased by its own people, and you have the decision: do you help the mantis who is telling you that he's being, assaulted or whatever, or do you assist the pursuers? There's another one where you there's little tiny quest lines that usually you'll go to one sector or one beacon and they'll say, hey, can you escort me to this other beacon? And all it requires is you to go to that beacon and you usually get a result. But there's one where they say, will you bring this, Lady Zoltan across this sector for us? And when you get to that last sector, she pleads saying, no, they're bad people. They, I'm a prisoner of theirs. I'm not doing this by my own free will. And then you have the decision. Do you side with her and fight the ship that you are supposed to deliver her to? Or do you give her up to the ship that you're supposed to deliver her to? Mm-hmm. And they both have different outcomes. And you have to make that decision.
Yeah, it's not exactly like a BioWare level of morality choices in the game, but it does have kind of a lot of choices that you have to make. And what's interesting about it is it often will present you with one choice that is the choice that you would naturally make as a gamer, with a heart, with two thumbs and a heart. but there's often an opposing choice that may actually result in more scrap. And it's pretty hard in this game to argue against more scrap.
You have to do the decision that results in more scrap, which actually, while we're talking about this, very often the ship that you're fighting will offer to surrender, and they will give you, usually it'll be resource heavy. They'll give you a lot of fuel, missiles, or drone parts, but not a lot of scrap. Unless you particularly need whatever resource it is that they're offering you, because sometimes they'll offer you like 7 or 8 missiles, and missiles themselves are expensive, so you can do the math and say, well, that's a net gain because of how much I would have spent. But if you're not using missile weapons, or you've got plenty of missiles, or you've got plenty of fuel,
kill them all.
Yeah, you want to refuse their surrender and destroy them, because it will almost always result in more scrap. And very often, or at least sometimes, it will result in more scrap and the same resources that they were offering in the first place. If they offer you a weapon or an augment, take that every time.
Guys, this has been an awesome episode, and I can't wait to go back in to play this game again now that I've heard the tips you guys have had for me. This game is really worth replaying, as many times as you feel like it, but it's also a great game that you can dive into and play a full, complete game in an evening, or play it multiple times over the course of a weekend. Where can people get this game?
People can pick this game up, I think. In my opinion, the definitive edition of this game is the iPad version. The touchscreen controls are fabulous, and the fact that I can plop down on my sofa and play it whilst watching television is ideal.
It is, I think, probably my favorite game on the iPad.
It's also available on basically all computer platforms. It's available through Steam. It's available as a DRM-free digital download. You can find it at their website. Do you know that website?
I think it's just FTLgame.com, but if that's not correct, I'll make sure I append it to the show notes.
And I would say if you have the iPad, go ahead and purchase it in that version. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, that version is terrific. And I have both, and I've been playing the iPad version way more than I've been playing the computer version.
Yeah, I bought the computer version, and when I saw the iPad version was around, it was available, I immediately purchased it, and I haven't fired it up on the computer.
That said, the computer version is a fantastic version, too. If you can play it, play whatever version you can.
Yeah, it's the same game. It's just streamlined on the iPad for touch controls.
Yeah.
There's no lack of feature on either. Everything it's the full game on both. It's just...
Absolutely.
So, whatever you have. I don't have an iPad, so I play it on my computer.
And on the computer, I would say that the controls are still great.
It's really well optimized for the keyboard controls.
There's a little bit of shortcut keys to learn, but they're easy to learn, and once you've learned them, I think it probably plays faster on the computer.
So all the versions are great. It's a pretty cheap game. It's $9.99 on all the platforms. $9.99 is a tough sell on the iPad because a lot of people look at it and think, most of these apps are free to play or whatever. But trust me, this is a really complete, polished, super well done game, and it is worth every penny of the $10. And it is worth that $10 on whichever platform you choose to buy it on.
Yeah, there is no pay to win. There's no DLC. There's nothing. You pay the $10, you've got the entire game.
This is a developer doing everything right. $10 is a steal for this game, and they even went back a really long time later and added a huge amount of great, really improving content for the game and added it 100% for free. So you can tell that this is a game made by people that love the game, love their fans, and wanted to create something great for them. So I'm really glad we got a chance to discuss the game in so much detail because I absolutely love this game. I can't wait to dive back into it and play it again. If you want to keep up with our podcast, I hope that you'll come and follow us on Twitter. We are @_shortgame. Or you can find our podcast's fantastic and attractive website at www.theshortgame.net. I've been Reagan Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter @ReaganK. I spell that funny. It's RayganK. Nate?
You can follow me on Twitter @NateSTL.
And plugging again for Nate's other podcast. Nate's on a great podcast about the St. Louis Cardinals called Talking About Birds, and their download numbers are off the charts.
Yeah, if you're a fan of baseball, particularly the St. Louis Cardinals, we'd love to have you listen.
They are perhaps the premier St. Louis Cardinals baseball podcast.
One of what appears to be two total. So.
Oh, you have a rival.
Yes.
That's even better. I hope you destroy them. What are they called? Actually, don't speak their name out loud. We don't want anybody checking them out. And Shane, where can people find you?
People can find me at 8bitshane. And I just want to issue a Twitter challenge to anybody. I will be, for the next week or two, I'm going to tweet every high score that I get in Faster Than Light. And if anyone tweets theirs at me, I will reply. We'll see if who gets the highest out of the three of us.
Good idea.
It's on. It's on.
All right.
Well, thanks, guys. This was a fantastic episode, and I hope you'll all join me again next week when we discuss Thomas Was Alone, the critically acclaimed indie platformer about friendship and jumping. Thomas Was Alone is the story of the emergence of the world's first sentient AIs, and it's a really great puzzle platformer. It's available on Steam for $9.99, and it'll run on a Windows, Mac, or Linux PC. And it is also available on the PlayStation 3 and the PS Vita, where it also costs $9.99, or it's free if you are a PlayStation Plus member. So I hope you'll check it out and join us again next week to talk about the game. Thanks, guys.